Okay, Hannah, you great champion. Welcome to the podcast. How are you feeling now, like 4 or 5 days removed from a fantastic victory at the Gorge 100k?
Good. Still a little bit in disbelief. I took Gunner for a hike today. Well, relatively hike, and he was like sprinting around me, like, "Come on, like, let's go!" And I'm just like waddling about. But really good. Yeah, super excited. It's been a bunch of fun days, and everybody has been like overly kind to me. So I'm like, you guys, like, thank you. But so it's been fun to like connect with some new people, or even people that, especially in the trail community, that I've known for a long time. It's been really fun to connect with just different individuals that I've looked up to for years, or I've had a couple of people reach out like, "Oh, I saw you finish this race 2 years ago," or like, "Oh, I saw you on the trail on Tuesday," and I'm like, "Oh, like, just say hi, like, I would love to talk." So it's been super fun. Overall great. Yeah, super great.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think for me personally, you were the story of the weekend. It was definitely the breakout race of your career. I'm just so impressed. And we released the 100K highlight video this morning. I'm not sure if you had a chance to see it yet, but it was the first time that I saw the clip of you finishing, and Zach Marion, who had been filming you over the last couple of miles towards the finish line. While you're in the finishing chute, he says, "This is your breakout race and you only get one of them." And it's so true. And as I was saying to you before we hit record, I do want to do sort of a deeper background with you, just because it is your breakout race. So maybe just give us a quick backstory of who Hannah Allgood is, where you're from, where you grew up, your introduction to running, and where you are now.
Yeah, so I grew up in Wisconsin, and ironically, I hated running as a kid. So I danced from 3 to 16, but my main sports were basketball and soccer. So played soccer year round, and then basketball was probably like my true love of a sport. I just loved the speed of it all. I mean, I ran track in high school or middle school, and I like the 100-meter dash, I was like, anything longer than that was not happening. But yeah, basketball was kind of where my heart lied. And then I didn't start running until probably a senior in high school. And it was just for fun. I had no watch. I don't know how far I ran. I mean, the first run, now it's funny. I went running with friends, and it was a half mile, literally a half mile. And I was like, oh my gosh, we had to have gone like at least 5 miles. And so, yeah, and then I just kind of slowly started running more, but especially trail running. I mean, I know I said this on the podium, but Gil is literally the reason why I'm trail running.
Your husband, Gil.
Yes, my husband, Gil. Because I was running, when we first met, I was running more than him, but never on the trails. And he's like, "We should run on the trails." I was like, "I'm not interested. Like, I really don't want to." And I remember there's one trail in the canyon in the Springs that just is a doozy of a climb and still is terrible. And I just was like walking it. I'm like, "I'm never doing this again. Like, I hate this. This is terrible." And then he's just like, "No, like, we can do it." So it kept kind of going, and then kind of decided like we should actually like try this. And I wanted to get a coach, mainly because it takes a little bit of less effort on my end. Like, I can program and I can do that, but it's easier to be, for me, I'm like, someone just tell me what to do. Mm-hmm. I can do it. Yeah. And so I think my first true trail race was like a 15 miler, I want to say in 2019. Mm-hmm. I think that was, and it was just a local trail race. I had done one other like Xterra race that it was kind of funny. It was at Beaver Creek. I don't even know how far it was. Gil was doing it. And I was like, I'll just sign up like day of. And then I like did that. I think I got 4th or something, but had randomly like, because I won my age group, was like, "Here, you can go to Xterra Worlds." I was like, "I don't even know what I'm doing."
Oh, really?
Like,
in Hawaii?
So, yeah. So
cool.
I have like a little like thing we keep all of our stuff in our shed. We've got like a little board of all our stuff. And I was like, I was like, should we go to Hawaii? Like, should we do this? And at that point I had, no idea about anybody or anything trail. And then, it's just kept going and just been super fun. And it's, I think just my background being super competitive, I didn't end up playing a college sport. I decided like, since I was going to do something in the medical field, I was like, I really need to like, I chose academics over athletics. And so I think I really missed like that competitive part of my life. And so like trail running is kind of that fun, like push yourself, see what you can do. But it's really, especially as a female athlete, not that I don't love playing basketball with men, but it's just hard. You know, like when you're going against guys that are so tall.
Did you watch the Final Four? The women's Final Four was awesome, huh?
Oh my gosh. This is the first year I watched like the men's and the women's Final Four, and like just so motivating. And it like, I think it was when the Final Four, I was shooting hoops. Like it was probably a week before this race. We have a little community center by our house. I was like shooting hoops, and this one time I just did like a step back, and my like right knee, like I don't know what happened, but it was like pain. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to run this race. Like,
classic.
I was so mad.
Yeah. I played lacrosse growing up, and the thought of stepping on a lacrosse field and buckling a chin strap and like making a lateral move, I'm like, it's terrifying to me.
Yeah.
I'm 36 now, so it's a different thing. So how'd you're from Wisconsin, you live in Colorado Springs now. How did that come to be? And you mentioned that you're in the medical field. So maybe round out this story as to how you ended up in Colorado and what you do professionally.
Yeah. So for college, I ended up going to Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. And so kind of that decision was I wanted to leave Wisconsin, just like I went to a super small high school. So wanted to get away a little bit, and then just kept moving west. Basically, so I went to graduate school at Creighton University to become a physical therapist. And so with that, getting your doctorate in that, you have to do just like any rotations, things like that. And my last rotation was actually out here in Colorado Springs at a network out here. And my best friend from undergrad, she lived in the Springs. So basically I was like, okay, like one, it's beautiful. And then I just decided I needed one friend. Like if I move anywhere, I just need one person I trust. And so moved to Colorado Springs and then got a job. And now I work at Children's Hospital Colorado, and I do pediatric sports med PT. So tons of ACL injuries, all that kind of stuff, ankle sprains, shoulder injuries, anything like that. And so, yeah. And then we've been in the spring since 2016.
So good. Yeah. I feel like Colorado Springs is underappreciated as a trail running destination. Pikes Peak is in your backyard. You've got the incline, which is 2,000 feet in a mile. And beyond those two landmarks, so much just good, smoother running than you get sort of in Boulder or other parts of the Front Range, and sort of a bigger city in Colorado. So yeah, a great place to be located, especially as your career begins to explode in front of our eyes. So let's start talking about Gorge. And I want to do like a deeper, longer podcast with you eventually, because I think your story is an interesting one that deserves a lot more than we have time for today. But going into Gorge, well, first, like I want to set the record straight too, because I twice had to ask you what your name was out on the course. And I just quickly explain your ultra sign up name versus, your married name now, because I really just like want this to be on the record, because I think there's some massive things ahead for you. And I want people to sort of know your name, and start to cultivate your personal brand. So tell the story of your name here.
Yeah. So my maiden name is Osowski. And my married name is Hannah Allgood. And so basically I was very paranoid. So last year, 2021, I had actually signed up for CCC, but we had gotten married because of COVID. We had to move our wedding back. And so I basically wanted to be able to re-sign up for CCC. And somehow in my mind, I created, if I changed my last name to Allgood, that somehow like somewhere my performance index would get lost, so I wouldn't be able to sign up for CCC. Like I was just very paranoid that I had to be like call France and like, have this whole thing. So I haven't changed it like officially on those things and like, truly fully. I tell everybody it's all good. Mainly because I was just paranoid that I wouldn't be able to sign up and then I wouldn't be able to contact someone. And so that's where it's like a little bit of confusion, but now we're getting into the process of actually changing everything altogether. But I just didn't want to lose an opportunity to do the CCC, and again, made up probably in my mind, but just like so paranoid that for some reason, like mainly because the CCC and just UTMB and that whole platform is like an unbelievable dream for me. So I feel like I was like, I don't want to lose maybe this is my only opportunity to do this. So I don't want to lose that.
So, okay. I wanted to establish that because in our sort of race previews, and as I looked at Ultra Sign Up, I was like, okay, here's Hannah Allgood. She looks like she's got some good results sort of in the Mountain West region. She'll be a fun sort of personality to follow throughout the day. And then when I met you, or when I asked you what your name was, you're like Hannah Allgood. And I was like, that's a totally different name that was on the start list. Anyway, so I just wanted to establish that Hannah Allgood equals Hannah Allgood.
Correct.
And at some point, those two things will come together digitally, both with your UTMB index and your Ultra Sign Up ranking. So, okay, now we can talk about Gorge. I think, for me, as I look at your results, it seems like you've mostly raced around the Mountain West in Colorado and Utah, and this was sort of your first time branching out, coming to the Pacific Northwest. So I'd love to hear how Gorge ended up on your radar and sort of why you chose to come race with us.
Yeah, so you're the reason Gorge came on my radar. I listened to your podcast really consistently and had seen, I followed you on Instagram forever. And so I was like, okay, that's great. And so mainly in the beginning of this season, knowing I was doing CCC, I'd only done the 100k at Never Summer before. And so basically I was like, I want to do another one. But then there's Bandera. I had thought about Bandera, and then Black Canyon, and Megan, my coach, had reached out to Black Canyon to see if I could get in, and they just hadn't reached back. So I was like, okay, well, that's out. And Bandera kind of scared me in the sense it was really soon. Like I didn't think I was ready, prepared. And then listening to you, I was like, okay, like, we love the Pacific Northwest. Like, this will be fun. I was like, this looks beautiful. And I wanted to find a little bit more races where there's a little bit more technical terrain and climbing this season, just because knowing, like, I've never raced in Europe, that's a completely different terrain. And so trying to find something that was a little bit more unique or similar to that as much as possible. And then it worked out just timing wise. And like I said, we love the Pacific Northwest. Like Gil, as soon as he landed, he's like, can we move here? It's like, okay, we're not moving. Like, we're not moving. But not
before CCC for sure. You need to train in the springs for CCC. Yeah.
So it was just so funny. Cause let's move now. So yeah. And so that was kind of how, and then I had told Megan about it, and she was like, yeah, we should do it. Like, that would be great for you. So I was like, all right, we're going to do it. And at that time I was like, okay, so maybe everybody will be doing Bandera and Black Canyon. And then, as I watch slowly as people are signing up, I'm like, oh man, like, I don't know if I'm ready. So yeah, that's how I kind of found it, and super excited about it.
So you've just mentioned your coach, Megan Roche. I just listened to the Swap podcast where they did a little bit of a breakdown, and they had many athletes racing with us over the weekend, but you were definitely kind of the highlight of that conversation too. And they sang your praises, and we'll go into that a little bit more, but I'd love to hear about your and Megan's relationship and what you guys were working on in training leading up to Gorge, how the first couple of months of 2022 was going for you in terms of training, and any detail you can provide as to what led to such a fantastic performance.
Yeah, I first off love Megan, appreciate her so much. I think just her whole journey in general is really motivating to me. And then also just being in the medical field, like, she gets it. Like, my life doesn't stop when I leave, work. And I think that's been really integral, because there's just some time leading into this race. I had been studying for the last 9 to 10 months for an exam, just a specialty exam. And so there had been a lot of times where I was like, should I be doing doubles? She's like, no, like, you don't have time to do doubles. You're doing too much other stuff. And so really having an open conversation about that was really nice. And then it's actually pretty fun because in the springs, we're starting to really build a trail community. And so there was a lot of little, like, local fun little virtual races that they did. So I told her about them, and I was like, hey, they were like 10 miles here or there, 7, but just some local people were putting them on. And then even like Mark Tatum put on a little event, kind of like Quad Dipsy. And so I was like, I really want to do those because I hadn't really participated in the past. And so I actually did I would say a lot of those for my workouts. So it was basically like max out effort for like 7-8 miles, which previously in training, I hadn't done a lot of like true efforts like that.
Such good workouts. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other big thing is being confident going quickly on the trails. And the other major key component for me was, we do a lot of efforts in my long runs, which I think I really need to be confident, not only that I can maintain a good effort, but also that I'm not going to just die after that effort is done.
That's what she said in the podcast, that you do your long runs at like a pretty high intensity.
Yeah. So I usually have some sort of warm up, and then it'll be like an hour or a little bit more of like pushing, like 50K pace or an hour pace or something like that. And then we had quite a few weekends where I did back-to-back doubles. So, or not that, basically long run on Saturday, and then also like another 20 miler on Sunday or something like that.
And then with the Saturday one, do you build the intensity into the first one or the second one?
First one. Yeah. So first one, it would be like, I think the longest run I did was 25, maybe 26. Cool. And that one, it was, okay, that's where your hour and a half effort is. And then Sunday, it's all about, okay, you're going to do 18 miles, but it's all easy effort. And so kind of how I did that is, usually on my Saturdays, I didn't do quite as much vertical gain. And then Sundays on my tired legs, I was like, okay, I'm trying to put a lot of gain on that. And she didn't really say much about that, but in my brain, I was like, this makes sense. Like, I'm tired. Like, I should get better at climbing and descending. So usually in like the 18 miler, I would try to do at least like 4,000 vert ish in that 18 miles to just get used to like working on tired legs. Cause I think that's a huge component that change is usually at mile 40, mile 50, I was like dying versus like, and 18 on Sundays, I was like, okay, I got 18 miles, I got 4,000 vert, like I can do this. And so it gave me confidence that I could run on tired legs. So yeah,
it certainly worked. So let's talk about the race. I want you to talk us through the first 20 miles because it was right around mile 20 that you made the pass and took the lead. And I happened to be there to witness it. So we'll get to that in a second. But before we do, talk us through those opening miles, like the first third of the race.
Yeah. So in the beginning, I actually felt I had probably the first mile in, everybody's starting, there's adrenaline, and I was trying to calm myself down. I'm like, okay, Hannah, this is only mile 1. Like, you don't need to go. Cause people had gone ahead and I had kind of weighed the pros and cons. And then I was just like, no, not worth it. And I also felt like pretty cold and flat. Like my legs, I was like,
it was cold. It was cold and wet. I was like, freezing.
Yes. And my legs didn't feel great. And I was like, oh God, this is going to be like a very long day on these legs. And then just kind of tried to find. So I really tried to find Alex because I knew Alex knew the trail super well.
Alex Borsick, you're referencing. Yep. Local Portlander. Yep. Yeah.
So I was like, I know she's been on the trails a bunch. So she at least like knows like a good effort pace to go. And also like knows where we're going. Cause I haven't even trained in the dark. So, it's raining. I've got my headlamp on. I'm like, I can't really see. I don't know. And so basically kept going. And then obviously like mile 8 or 9, it just started downpouring. And I had like my little like Houdini Patagonia on. And I was like, well, this is the best we got, which was great. The good thing about that, it's so light and it was really only raining for a while.
And then it turned into just a perfect day. So.
Yes. Yeah. So that was like totally fine. But yeah. And so in the beginning I had all of my like UCAN in a filter water bottle. So that was bad because it wouldn't come out because all of like the stuff would get caught. And so
why were you using a filter bottle? Were you thinking you were going to be drinking out of the streams on the course or?
Yeah, no, just dip it in the waterfall there. No, mainly because I have those. It's like I only own like 4 bottles. So
okay, I'll send you some bottles. I've got about 1 million.
So I was like, I have to use these. And I didn't think about it. Rookie mistake. It's fine. And so I was super grateful that Gil and my friend Kasha were at the first aid station because I was like, you got to take this now. Like, I'm not getting anything. And then from there, I just kept running. And so Tara and I were running together for a while. and then just kind of slowly caught up to Ellie in a group. And then Tara's actually the one like, oh, do you want to make a move? I was like, sure, like, let's go. Yeah. So we like went around them and then kept going. And then finally we got to Multnomah Falls, and I am I feel like climbing, I'm confident in my climbing. And so I was like, okay, I know, one, that this is like the biggest climb, and two, I'm like I know I can run this whole thing. Yeah. And so then we started running, and Tara's like, I'll see you on the other side. And I was like, you probably will. Because I would always like kind of go ahead of her on the climb, and then she would catch up with me every single downhill. Yeah. And so then we're just going, and it's all switchbacks. And at this point I'm like, man, when is this thing gonna end? And so I could finally see Holly Ann up there. And so I was like, okay,
right at the top. I was there. Okay. So let's pick up the story here, because right when you get to the top of the climb up Wakena Falls, and then you descend down Multnomah, I saw Holly Ann coming, and I was like, okay, here's the women's leader. And then I was like, oh my goodness, second place is right on her heels. And that's when I asked you your name. I was like, so what's your name? And of course, like I don't know, maybe this is something that bleeds over from swap influence, but you, of course, like you were totally animated, had tons of energy. You're like, woohoo, like, total, like, great attitude. And Holly Ann was also just smashing it. And so I jumped on the back of the train and filmed you guys for a little while. And then as soon as it started going downhill and was like a little bit technical, you mentioned that Tara was passing you on the technical terrain going downhill, but you then just, quickly swung around Holly Ann, and you were out of sight like that. Like you opened up a gap, like a fairly significant gap, almost immediately. So at that point, what's going through your mind? Are you sort of making a conscious decision to hit the gas, to make a decisive move and to sort of take control of the race, or how did that play out?
Yeah. So that was 100% my plan. I was like, okay, because we're both descending, and I was like, okay, I think I can like go a little bit faster down this. And so then actually when I passed her, I think she slipped, and I was like, oh no, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry, because I didn't want her to fall. And because I probably should have been like better about that. But yeah, and then just kind of, I felt really good on the downhill. And then I just kind of like let my legs go. And then it's like, wow, like I feel really good down this. And then just tried to like cruise on down, especially since it was not super switchbacky, so you could kind of let your legs go a little bit more. And so
but it's like wet and technical back there too, and you were moving really well on that descent. Yeah. I got all of it on camera too, but I lost service, so the video is gone forever. I'm so bummed about it, because
way to go, Dylan.
Luckily there was a lot of people watching it live, so those people hopefully that will forever be burned in their memories. But super, super impressive, the pass, and then opening up a gap right away, and then you were in control of the race the rest of the day. So you said in your Instagram post, just sort of like backing up a little bit, that you were nervous for the race, that you questioned whether or not you belonged there, and that Megan sort of encouraged you to believe. You got a text from your mom that sort of influenced your wardrobe and made you feel a little bit more comfortable. So maybe talk about the psychology of all that stuff, because I think there's a lot of people out there that can relate.
Yeah. So the kind of the mantra I had, I mentioned this too, is like, you can, you will, believe that you can, believe that you will. And I just kept repeating that. So a week or two before the race, I was like talking to my therapist, and she knows how nervous I was. And she's like, you need to come up with a mantra. And I was like, okay, what should that be? She's like, you have to figure it out. And like nothing was coming, like I was trying to think of those things. And I had a really candid conversation with Megan of just like, I know you believe in me and everyone believes in me, but I think also not only nervous that I would like let myself down, and not that anybody would have been disappointed in my performance, but I think just so many people that have been so supportive of me are like, no, you got this. And I didn't want to let them down. And so really trying to change that own belief system in your mind, because I think a lot of runners and a lot of people are like, do I belong here? And should I even be doing this? Like, what am I doing here? And I think that's where trying to believe in yourself a little bit more. And I think the great thing about Megan and David is they're such big, believe in yourself and that'll help you. And I think sometimes you have to believe in yourself. Even if no one else does, it's like, I love what I'm doing. I know I've put in the work, and I've been doing this for a couple of years, and I woke up and it was -2 outside and I still ran. So like I can do this. And I think just repeating that to myself, and knowing no matter what happens is like, everybody will still be there for me and be like, you did great and we're so proud of you. And I think that's what really kind of fueled that whole mantra that I used. And just, the whole race. Like I know people are like, what do you think about? I was like, I was literally thinking that for 10 hours, like just repeating it over and over in my brain. So yeah.
So cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, I think there's obviously even great athletes have that self-doubt sometimes. And for you now, proving to yourself that you are capable of these types of performances, it doesn't necessarily mean that self-doubt immediately goes away, right? It's probably something that you're always going to have to deal with. And it is important to have coaches and supporters like your mom and your coach to be there for you and to encourage you to have that belief, because that can ultimately be the deciding factor in races at this level. So I guess let's talk a little bit about the rest of the race. I mean, you were in control, like I said, from that point on, but you picked up your husband at the second out and back. And at that point, you probably saw that you had a fairly comfortable gap to Tara Fraga, who finished second place about 10 minutes behind you. So you probably had some confidence at that point that you had it in the bag, barring catastrophe. But are there any other sort of highlights from the race that you think are worth mentioning?
Well, there's one section I missed the flag and got lost. So that was something that I didn't tell anybody.
God, that pisses me off.
Yeah. So, well, no, it's not your fault. I was like coming down, I don't even know what, it was like a parking lot, kind of big parking lot. And it was funny because I think I literally was looking at my feet and just like ran the opposite direction. And it was kind of funny because I was like running down and then I ran up, and then there was just some orange flags. And I was like, okay, Dylan said, don't follow the orange flags. So then I was running around this parking lot, and then I finally got, and I was like, okay, well, just go back. And so then I saw the flag, and I was like, oh, well, I just missed that. But during that time, I was like, oh no, you have to be kidding me. Cause I didn't know where anybody was behind me. Cause before finally picking up Gills, I hadn't seen anybody, or no one had told me how far back people were. So, so that was the first time. And it was kind of in that aid station. I told Gil, I was like, we got to go now. Cause I was like, I don't know where they are, but I know they're close. And so I finally seen them, knowing I had about kind of 10 minutes and probably about 10-ish miles to go, maybe a little bit more. I was like, okay, I was still moving good. So I was pretty confident in the, like you said, unless something really dramatic happened, it's like, there's nowhere they're moving an entire minute faster than me.
Minute a mile. Yeah, no way.
Yeah. So, cause I was still feeling good, but there was a moment where I stepped in this huge puddle and I could feel the blister on my foot. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to get taken down by the blister. Yeah. But I really, I think that was trying when I was first starting to slowly believe. And I think for the whole race, being in the position I was, it was more like, oh crap, I still have 40 miles. I still have 30 miles. I still have 20 miles. Mm-hmm. Just knowing from my own experiences in races where I'll be winning and, someone catches up to me with 5 miles to go or whatnot. And so that was kind of finally when they get through the last stage station, I take off my vest and oh my gosh, couldn't believe. I was like, we did it. We're going to do this thing. Yes. And it's so special. So yeah, it was so
freaking cool.
Yeah.
So you finished in 9 hours, 34 minutes, 5th place overall, nearly an hour faster than the fastest time on the previous course. I am not entirely sure yet which course is faster, but I mean, like I said, performance of the weekend. There's awesome photos of you at the finish line, looking quite emotional. What was the feeling like to cross that finish line, prove to yourself that you did belong? And then I want to sort of hear about what's next for you.
Yeah. I knew I was going to cry. I knew it was going to happen.
I think you made many other people cry. I mean, I was getting a little misty myself.
I'm usually not that emotional, but I think just especially going into that weekend and like listening to your guys' previews and then some other people's predictions, I was like, man, I'm not even like in the top 10, like,
oh, you were flying under the radar. It's not going to be the case anymore for you. I'll tell you what.
No,
certainly not on my show.
Which is fun and but yeah, I think it was just a culmination of all of the emotions of like, wow, like all the people that had helped me to get there and do that. And then just truly like in disbelief that happened, but also so happy and grateful for everybody that made that happen. And so, yeah, I think just all of those things, I couldn't not cry. I was just so happy and excited at just knowing that I had like built more confidence for myself and kind of broke through, I think, a little bit of like a mental barrier of knowing what to do. And so, yeah, incredible. I still feel like watching those videos and I'm like, sorry, everybody that I keep posting them. It's just so emotional for me and so exciting. So, yeah.
So good. I mean, that's the real stuff right there. And that's really what it's all about. I mean, it's a wordless thing, but we all understand it. And I think the photos certainly capture that feeling effectively for you. So what's next, man? We have to know. Hannah Allgood has arrived on the scene. You're never going to fly under the radar ever again. You've mentioned CCC a couple of times. Tell us what your goals are for the future, because I think there's going to be a lot of people who want to follow along.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of goals. I mean, I would love to run a 100-miler. That still scares me a little bit. But I think just continuing, there's certain goals like doing URA 100 or even obviously being a part of Western States, but even be able to like travel a little bit more and race in Europe a little bit more. Those are huge goals. There's just so many beautiful places to see. And I think that's the thing I love most about trail running is not only you get to push yourself to the limits, but you get to do it in beautiful places. So those are the big goals. I think next, unless we'll see, I'm signed up for a couple of things, but Megan was kind of like, are you okay if we maybe change the schedule? So I don't know what that looks like. Originally I had planned Quad Rock, and then I was super excited to do San Juan Solstice. Now
that's going to be a race this year. Claire Gallagher is running, I think. Hillary Allen's running. That's a real course too. They call it Hard Rock Junior. So
yeah, so we'll see, and that may or may not happen. But right now I'm on the wait list. But yeah, so we'll see and decide if that's a good plan for me or not. But that's one for sure that has been on my bucket list for a long time, and because it's so beautiful and also scary, but also just so, I think, just different emotions and sets you up for mountain terrain. So, yeah.
So then is CCC kind of the big goal for the second half of the year?
I would say so. Yeah. Looking at that start list, I was like, oh gosh, I told Megan even after I signed up for it, I was like, maybe we'll just do this like as like a for fun race, like just get out there and experience, and it'll still be for fun. But I think there's going to be probably a little bit more, seriousness placed on it versus more so like vacationing and just enjoying it a little bit more. So that's definitely a big goal. But I think it's pretty evolving this year, I think, just based on how I feel and how things go. So, yeah.
Well, you're only 5 days removed from an awesome 100K, so you can enjoy that for a little bit, but a little unsolicited veteran advice for me. I think you have all the frickin' tools to smash CCC. And I think there would be a lot of people who would be really excited to see you compete there. There is a bit of a learning curve of going over and racing on the European scene. And so you do have to sort of begin to visualize that sort of more circus-like environment with a lot more fanfare, certainly than there was at Gorge Waterfalls, although I thought we did a good job too. But I don't know. Believe in yourself. And I think, CCC is a totally worthy next step for you in terms of like a serious focus event. And speaking for myself and Freetrail, we would be really excited to see you race there. So, well, Hannah, what a pleasure. Okay. Yeah. We've gone over time already. And I really want to have you back on. Maybe we'll do another one sort of before CCC where we aren't time constrained and we can go a little bit deeper on your story. But congratulations again. Thanks for coming to the Gorge. It was great to meet you and get to know you a little bit. Thanks for coming on the podcast too.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, David Laney, you champion. You just asked me if I'm recovered. I think you're the one who deserves that question. The answer for me is no. How are you feeling a few days after your awesome victory at the Gorge?
I feel good. I mean, yeah, I felt good. I didn't have to be out there for 2 days up at I don't know what time you were up, probably 3, probably 2, probably up till 2. I'm sure you didn't sleep for 48 hours probably.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of sleep, but man, I'm actually quite surprised as how exhausting it was. I mean, I ran with you guys a few miles, and a few miles on Sunday, but you know, there wasn't any physical exhausting exertion going on, but of course, emceeing the finish line, you know, just expending that type of energy. And I mean, it was just so freaking cool. And I have a new appreciation for race directors and the effort that they put in. I couldn't imagine having that be my full-time job and having to put races on multiple times a year. So it was so good.
Well, you guys did an awesome job. It was super fun.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it. And it was so great to have you there. And you also did an awesome job. How are you feeling, man? Physically, I mean, that was a freaking insane run from you. How's the body feel after 100Ks in the Gorge?
Yeah, feels pretty good today. Sunday, things were super beat up. Just all that little rocky, little technical sections added up big time. And so it was more acute soreness than I've had in the past.
Yeah.
Ankles were sore, feet were sore.
Ankles and feet for sure in the Gorge.
Yeah, just all that little rocky stuff. But today feeling a lot better. Feel
good, man. Well, congratulations, man. I want to hear all about the race execution and the training leading up to it, but maybe backing up a little bit. You've been on a tear recently. I mean, you've been smashing it quietly. You always sort of execute quietly, but even going back a year ago, you were 4th at Canyons and then you ran super fast, 12 and a half hour, 100 miler Desert Solstice. You won Formidable to start the year this year. And now you win Gorge in a super fast time. What have you been up to, man? As a lifelong runner, it seems like you're sort of on a good one right now. How's your running been feeling?
Yeah, it's been feeling good. You know, I always think when things are if you look at someone's training, when things are going well, it probably means they started doing something right 2 years ago. So 2.5 years ago, I finally told Brett Hornig, okay, you need to coach me. I'm doing things that are kind of silly. I think I need to kind of refocus. And that was about the time I signed with Kraft. And so it was kind of I think there's a good momentum here. I do still want to be competitive. I don't, as much as I love just spending all day walking around and sitting in the mountains. I want to have a couple more years of true competitive running.
Yeah.
So, and I can still go do the mountain stuff, but let's give it stay focused and continue doing this for a little bit longer. So, the coaching from Brett has been really, really helpful.
Talk about that. I think this is very interesting because you were self-coached for a long time and it led to incredible results. Everybody knows the things that you've done in the sport. If not, go check out the Ultra Sign Up. But man, I mean, you've been on the podium of UTMB. You've been 4th at UTMB. You can compete across all different distances, all different terrains. And it strikes me as a fairly mature move to enlist your friend and colleague from Trails and Tarmac, Brett, to right the ship. So talk about what put you to place to where you were motivated to make that change.
Yeah. So Brett and I were college teammates as well. So he's known my training for, I don't know, since 2008 or 2009. So we've known each other a long time. And he always essentially just had insightful like observations, like, well, yeah, you did this. That was a unique choice. Like maybe that wasn't super beneficial to your race. Or he'd be like, well, yeah, and you did this, 4 times before this really good race. Like why, like, so he just had good observations and I would just kind of be like, yeah, man, I just like running a lot of miles. And that was just always my excuse. Like I liked training hard, even though I totally knew that I trained to a point where it wasn't beneficial. And it probably was a little bit detrimental. Like I was overtrained a lot, but I like training. I like working out. It's fun.
Yeah.
So
you think he's probably reduced the overall volume?
Yeah, not by much, but by a little bit.
Yeah.
And just kind of believing in that, like, I probably like 7% less than I did in 2016. So it's not a ton, but the quality is significantly improved. I do those workouts that I kind of found annoying in the past and would kind of neglect. I just prioritize training a little bit differently. And just having someone call you on your stuff is really valuable.
Critical.
And so just, that accountability has been helpful, and just like, yeah, don't do that. Like,
that's awesome.
And, he lets the reins out sometimes, and I can just go do whatever I want for a couple of weeks. But
it's important to have.
Yeah, it's been helpful
times too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Well, man, it's working. It's working. Keep the train going.
Thanks.
I want to talk a little bit about craft and what you've got going on there, because that also seems like it's been a great new chapter for you, not only as a sponsored athlete, but it seems like you now have some sort of employment role with the brand as well.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So starting January 1st of 2022, I became an employee of Craft US, and I'm in charge of footwear activation. So this is the first year that we are launching our shoes in retail stores. So we've sold them online in the past, and this is the first year we decided to scale up and go into, retail stores across. So we're in SFRC, shops all over.
Yeah.
And so my role is going to those stores and doing an event like group run, pizza night, whatever, doing something fun, getting people to try on the shoes, and just kind of making it successful for the stores that have believed in us. So like, you brought the shoes in, we appreciate it. Let's make it successful. Let's sell the shoes. And so doing those events has been really fun. Craft's putting a lot behind, supporting me a lot and putting a lot behind this new line of shoes, and they're really fun. So yeah, it's been cool.
I think it's brilliant. And I've talked about this on the podcast in the past, recently in an episode with Claire Gallagher, because she sort of has a employment role in the marketing department at Patagonia. And this was shortly after you posted that you had accepted this new role. And I'm doing similar stuff now too, where you sort of marry your intellectual life with your athletic life. And I think it's a really powerful way to create a deep partnership between athlete and brand. Talk about how that's maybe made you feel about the brand itself and the people that you work with, and maybe some things that you've learned as part of being more involved in the actual operation of a business like that.
Yeah, it's been really fun. It's been a great learning experience. I'm way more invested. So as an athlete, I would get, boxes of stuff, and I would be supported in events, and I would, race and post pictures. As like an athlete employee,
I'm sorry to laugh, but it's like, yeah, that's the job.
Totally. And
there's nothing wrong with it. We should say there's nothing wrong
not
with
at all.
it.
Yeah. It's awesome. But like understanding the depth of the company and understanding that there's lots of people at Craft who are really invested and really love the sport. And it's just like people I like working with. It's like being part of you really get in the community in the, of the business when you're an employee rather than, and you can as just a contract athlete. But that employee athlete role is, I think, amazing. And I think is the way of the future. Ultimately.
Yeah. And I think that athletes are the most underused resources on the planet. I think every athlete on every team would like to be used more than they are. And for some people, like, the Killians and gyms and things like that, I mean, it is a full-time job to manage their lifestyle, being sort of like world famous, right?
Yeah.
But for the vast majority of us, it's like, it's a nice way to augment our athletic life, to keep things in balance a little bit more, and to contribute to our brand partners in a more powerful and more significant way. So I think it's really smart of you to do, and smart of Craft to recognize, the value that you could bring to them off the race course as well. You were just in Sweden before the race. What were you doing over there? That's for headquarters. Right?
Yeah. So we had So I was at the headquarters doing our quarter two, I guess, international sales meeting. So it was totally virtual still. But we were in making videos and making presentations on footwear and apparel for running and trail running line. Yeah. So it's super fun.
What can you tell us about the product before we start talking about Gorge a little bit? It seems like a pretty sweet stuff. I mean, just observing your kit, your footwear.
Yeah.
Tell us about the product a little bit.
Yeah. So currently we've got the CTM Ultra line. So we've got the Race Rebel, which is the kind of more road focused shoe. It is what I wore at Formidable. So on those dry California trails, it's great as well, but it's really a road focused shoe. Then in the middle, what I wore at Gorge last weekend is the CTM Ultra. So it's kind of that hybrid, kind of gravel bike shoe. Really
cool. Yeah. Good analogy. Yeah.
Really smooth on light trails. But it works on more technical stuff. It like worked well on the rocky sections, that talus, but just incredible on that. Once I got done on the PCT, it's just like, this is what it's made for.
Yeah.
So really designed for light trails and road, great on the roads as well.
Yeah.
And then CTM Ultra carbon version of the Ultra, which I wore. So throw a carbon plate in it, little snappier ride.
Yeah.
A little more responsive, just more energy return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks for the preview. Yeah. And I like what Craft is doing. They're definitely making a push. I mean, aside from yourself, of course, Tommy Rivs is part of the family too. Oh. And then, MK Sullivan.
Totally. Yep.
It's one way too cool. I don't know her personally, but she seems to be super, super talented. Ida Nilsson, great. I think, is on the team.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Legend she is. Yeah. So I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of athletes, but it's really cool and a fun thing to sort of observe on the industry side. So keep us posted on that. But let's talk about Gorge. This is an awesome freaking result for you, and sort of another data point in what's been a great last 12 months of competition for you. We talked about kind of the different training approach, or at least engaging a coach in Brett Hornig. What were you guys working on specifically leading up to Gorge? I know you used Formidable probably as like a nice stepping stone into the 100K distance. So maybe just give us a glimpse into the training and maybe some specific things that you think set you up for such a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. Formidable, the goal of Formidable was just to be the last hard session. I knew the 2 weeks before Gorge, I was going to be traveling, and it was going to be hard to just being on the road, just challenging to really get in quality training. And it worked okay. Mm-hmm. But the big focus was have a really hard session at Formidable. It's a little longer out than I would have wanted it to be, but it kind of just had to work. The focus in terms of daily training was a moderate amount of easy miles, a fairly easy long run. Usually I would have done more like pickups or threshold or tempo work during the long run, but we just kept that easy for the last 8 weeks or so. And then one, I would say like moderately hard, like effort of 7 or 8. Honestly, just threshold type work. And that was occasionally uphill and sometimes just flat on the road. And
so you were only doing one workout a week?
Just one workout a week. Yeah.
Give us an example of what that workout looked like. Was it like a 4x10 or like a 4x15 type thing? Or
so at the beginning it was more broken up. Like almost even shorter, like 5-minute intervals, and then got longer, and then just slowly pulled the recovery out. So by the end, it was like, hour threshold. Or so the pace basically stayed the same, and we just pulled the recovery, made recovery really short. Brilliant. Down to like a minute of recovery on pretty hard intervals. So that worked well. Threshold stuff always benefits me a lot.
Me too. I freaking love that stuff. Just like the tempo threshold stuff. I can do that all day. And then the VO2 max stuff. I can still get through it, but I freaking hate it. Me too. I see the value in it, but
totally.
Awesome. Well, shout out to Brett Hornig. I mean, good moves by you guys, and clearly paid off. And I think goes into an important overall training subject that I've talked to a few people about recently. And just like, I mean, Tim Tollefson even was just on talking about how he had reduced the intensity and the overall volume of his training and then just crushed it at Way Too Cool. And you're saying the same thing. And Claire Gallagher sort of said the same stuff as well. And it's counterintuitive. And especially for athletes at your guys' level, it's important for people to hear that it's not always about more volume, more intensity. And sometimes, that extra energy is what gives you the gas when you're 50 miles into 100K.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you, when I was trying to keep up with you, when you were 50 miles into 100K, you had that gas. So let's talk about the race itself. Talk us through the early part. I mean, you guys had a little bit of a pack going. So maybe just give us a quick breakdown of sort of like the early part of the race, and at what point you and Rich sort of broke away from the rest of the pack.
Yeah. Rich and Drew and James and I, and maybe a few others early on. I think it was just good energy. I think everybody was kind of at this similar effort. And so for, I think maybe 20 miles, 25 miles, that group stayed together pretty comfortably. It's just nice running with a good group. And then it started breaking up, I think, a little bit on the descent, maybe a little bit toward that aid station, that mile 30 beyond. I think that's when it really kind of broke up. And then
I was driving past you guys on the highway. And I could see you and Rich leaving Yeon together. Before, when I had seen you previously, it was still a group of 4. You were like 10 seconds ahead of Rich leaving that aid station on the bike path before you got back on the 400 trail. So let's talk about the competition with Rich, because then you guys were together for like the first 37-ish miles. And you made the major move, or established the gap at the aid station at Cascade Locks, roughly mile 37 or so. And I was running with you guys at the time, and I was providing commentary to our viewers on Instagram Live, just saying like, look what these guys do at the aid station here. This is going to be really important. They're running together. It's mile 37. Sometimes this is where the separation happens. And lo and behold, Rich, I don't think, had crew there. You dropped your bag, put on a new vest, and you were out, in 10, 15 seconds, and instantly established a 1.5-minute gap on Rich. So talk about that sort of critical part of the race and the overall strategy that you had, because I think for people observing, it was a valuable insight into what people can do to, be more efficient through aid stations, and really just how critical those aid station transitions are at the highest level. Talk about that whole sequence.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rich had put a gap, maybe a minute, going like mile 33. And I felt like we were running pretty hard at that point. So I was like, okay, I know this aid station's coming. I'm going to really I had planned to just do the backpack switch, but I knew it was going to be really important. Yeah. Cause he was moving really, really well. So we came into the aid station. I think I was like a few steps behind him, but I caught up to him on one of the little climbs. And then I was like, I know everything I need is in my pack. I'm just going to try and roll through as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And then I walked out of the aid station. I couldn't get my pack adjusted right. But I was expecting him to be right behind me. I was like, we'll probably have, I knew we had a climb coming, probably roll together up that. And so I think, having that pack ready to go, having a transition that took 5 seconds was really important, because I think it did put the pressure on him a little bit. He probably had to work a little harder coming out of the aid station. And then it's like, if somebody has a little gap, it's tough.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it was, I'm so glad we caught it on camera. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it.
You guys did an incredible job.
Well, because it was the perfect learning experience, I think, for maybe aspiring elite athletes or whatever to see that. And of course, we should say Rich Lockwood is less experienced than you. In fact, I talked to him about this after the race. I was like, dude, this is such a good stepping stone for you. He had an awesome race. And, sky's the limit for him. But I made the same point. I said, the critical moment was David switching packs and walking out of the aid station, barely missing or barely stopping for a second at Cascade Locks, where Rich stopped and had to resupply for a minute and a half. And that's exactly where the elastic broke. And you then had the gap that you needed to sort of hold him off to the finish line. So awesome.
And actually, thinking back, the reason I did the pack change was because I saw Dakota do that at Sonoma, and I saw Dakota was on the entry list. And so I was like, he's probably going to be doing that. The aid stations will be important.
Yeah,
I'm going to do that.
Yes.
So, you pass that, I learned from him. Rich is an amazing athlete. He'll learn from me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said to him. It was just like, he had a great race, second place, took home some cash and gained some super valuable experience that he can apply in the future. It's too bad Dakota wasn't there to duke it out with you guys, but I know he wanted to be there. Unfortunately, he just picked up some small little thing that put him on the sidelines briefly, but I think he's okay. So anyway, then a short time after that, 10 miles later or so, you were in the Wyeth aid station, and I thought I had a few minutes to get my stuff together until you would arrive. And then Ryan Thrower is like, Laney's here. So I had to freaking throw my shoes on in half a second and sprint to catch up to you. And man, trying to keep up with you, going out of that aid station, climbing back up to the trail. It felt like threshold pace for me. And you were, just super impressed with the pace that you were able to hold there. And then because it's an out and back, we saw Rich coming into the aid station. At that point, he was probably 3 minutes, maybe. I don't know if he took a gap or something.
Yeah, I timed it. It was 2 minutes. So 4 minutes behind.
Okay.
It was 2 minutes I'd been out. Yeah.
Okay. So then, after I sort of chased you for a mile or so out of that aid station, I waited for Rich, and it was 7 minutes by the time you got there. So then it was like, okay, David's fully in control of this now. So maybe talk about that last half marathon. It seemed to me like you were having a really special day. Is that how it felt out there? Was there any drama?
Yeah, the early miles, I always take a long time. It's not warm up. I'm warmed up, but it's just things are always clunky. But I knew, I love the PCT.
Yeah.
Just everything about it. it's just magical.
Yeah.
And like the sun was coming through the trees, and like the poem that your mother-in-law read at the beginning was just kind of like echoing my mind, like the history of the gorge. And so it was just like fun. It was just being out there, like on the PCT, in the forest. Like it was just like, it was a good trail day.
Were there any challenges? Like, was there any drama out there for you? Because I mean, I guess we should say that, I mean, of course you won the race in 8:34 and change. Ultimately the gap was 17 minutes at the end. So you put another 10 minutes on Rich over the course of those last 10, 12 miles. So, I mean, to me, from an outsider's perspective, it seemed like, almost a flawless day. You were running in the lead pack early, then it was down to a race of 2, and then you were out front. And by the end, it was 17 minutes, a fairly substantial gap. Were there any low points, or was it a pretty flawless day?
I think the lowest point was probably mile like 32. Rich got a pretty good gap on me on a climb, and I was like felt my legs felt fine. I just I was like, he's moving really well, and I'm like, there's still 28 miles to go, and I think that was like a little bit of a challenge, because I just like, he was climbing incredibly well, and I was like, I can't do that for 28 more miles.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, most of the day felt good. Fueling was good. The weather was absolutely perfect.
It was perfect, huh? Just to be on the
trail was
gas.
Perfect. Yeah, perfectly marked. No, like just it was good condition. Yeah, overall pretty good day.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well, yeah, I also talked to Rich. This is another funny anecdote, because he watched the little video where I was running behind you guys through that aid station. This is when we were talking about what he could learn from it. And he was like, that moment where like Laney broke into a hike behind me because he was in front still jogging up the hill. He was like, do you think he like was doing that to save energy, or like, do you think, why did he do that? I was like, man, that's just like, another veteran move. He just kind of broke into a hike for 20 seconds because he felt like he'd still be on your wheel, and there was no need to be running up that hill. And anyway, another great thing that we captured on film that I think people can learn from.
Yeah, I think any opportunity you have to even the effort out in the early month, like as soon as we started going uphill, we were going harder.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I don't want to be going harder. Even if they get a gap, in the long run, hiking will be better.
Yeah. Well, congrats, man. You freaking smashed it. It seemed like a textbook victory for you. So let's wind down by talking about what's next. You're, like I said, you're on a heater right now. I'm sure you want to keep the momentum going after some recovery. What does the rest of your season look like? Yeah,
the big focus will be UTMB. But
Let's go.
It'll be fun.
Yes.
But I'll do Tiger Claw 50 mile. So a bunch of vert on May 14th. And then I'll race something over the summer. Yeah. Probably in June or July, but not totally sure yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, David Laney returning to UTMB. I know you've been third, you've been fourth. You had a 12th or something?
Yeah, 14th. I think.
14th.
Yeah.
Making a return to, try and keep the momentum going on this heater. You're like Steph Curry right now from the 3-point line.
I wish.
Just keep the beginner's mindset, keep working with Brett, and I know we'll all be rooting for you in Chamonix. But congrats on Gorge, man. Thanks for coming out. It was a joy to have you there. And good luck on the rest of your season. Hopefully we connect in person soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.